I've heard you talk about how you really shouldn't be looking at internal rendering resolution and drawing too much in the way of conclusions from that. You really need to be looking at image quality. And I was trying to communicate exactly the same message today, is we need to change the way we're talking about resolution. Maybe we shouldn't be talking about it at all. The difficulty is, if you don't have a number, it gets very hard to have that conversation.
Any final words, Tyrant? Make them memorable, because this group is easily distracted.
You know what's funny? I follow a lot of tech channels. PlayStation, PC, gaming, graphics cards. But there is one thing I never see on PC and other tech channels, and that's a bunch of PlayStation fans screaming at loser PC gamers or Xbox fans, or saying, you're getting scammed for paying so much for PC parts when you can get 1,000-level gaming performance for only $350 if you buy a PS5 Slim diskless. And this statement is extremely accurate. My question to you is this: why do we always see PCMR, people screaming at console gamers on channels like this, or PS Ready, or other PlayStation channels? Why do they do that? Look, I'm not playing the victim card here, and some of these children think they're getting to me, but I find it so fascinating and interesting. I want to know, what is their goal? One person told me once that it's because they just want to convince everyone that PC gaming is the future and they don't want people to buy PlayStation consoles, because that would mean Sony would release more games on PC faster. But these so-called PC gamers, and I want to emphasize, I'm not attacking the PC gaming community. This is actually something I talk about with my brother a lot lately. BTW, my brother has a 4090 rig, better than 99% of PC gamers in the world. Anyway, these so-called PC gamers that want all the PlayStation exclusives day one are also the same people who make a huge scandal every time Sony releases an IP on PC because it requires a PSN account. They act like Sony is the greedy devil trying to suck your information and you'll be hacked. But at the same time, they have a Steam account, a Microsoft account, a Warner Brothers account, a Ubisoft account for all their single-player games. But no, Sony is the devil, because Sony had a hack on PSN 15 years ago. Take the Helldivers 2 situation, where everyone loved attacking Sony over the PSN drama, citing countries that couldn't have a PSN and how those countries would be excluded. I did a deep dive on that topic when it happened, and I explained that most of those countries are not even free countries. 90% of the countries without PSN are kind of dictatorships. Even Belarus in Europe. Oh boy, I got burned for that, like I was a corporate shill. But I was just explaining basic geopolitical and economic facts. But no. The counter-argument was Sony pony and Sony shill. Fine. Okay. So what happened? Eventually, Sony gave in and said, okay, no PSN requirement for Helldivers 2 for now, but some of those countries were still banned from playing that game. The irony? All those countries were forgotten about as usual. First world people used third world countries to get what they wanted. Sure, you could argue that some people were still reminding the community and Sony Arrowhead that, hey, those countries are still banned. There's still discourse around it actually, but the vast majority doesn't care. The biggest proof? The Steam reviews. In the months after, Helldivers 2 went from mostly negative reviews to mixed, and today it's sitting at mostly positive. Those countries are still banned, guys. But who cares? People got what they wanted. So forget about Egypt, Belarus, and Africa for now. This is why I will never go back to PC gaming or the PC gaming community. And again, I love PC gaming. My brother is a hardcore PC gamer, and I have PC gamer friends, but they all stay out of the forums and drama. Look, I'm not even looking for this drama, but I get PC gamers sending me screenshots of people getting excited for 5070 GPUs being at the level of a 4090. And we all know it's not true. We all know this is a lie from NVIDIA, and all the big GPU and tech channels are constantly warning people that the 5070 isn't even close to a 4090 powerhouse. But that comment doesn't sound good on a Sony Pony channel, am I right? I love tech. I love all tech. I love innovation and graphical improvements. And this kind of discourse takes away from that narrative. I see comments like, PS5 is so outdated and so shit and plays all games at 30 FPS, sub 10, 80p. Funny story. It's only funny until people actually start believing it. Let's look at Star Wars Jedi Survivor for a bit. Yeah, When it came out, it was a mess on PC and consoles. But even so, everyone recommended playing it on PS5 because it was much more stable. In December, I revisited Jedi Survivor on PS5 and PS4. I finally finished it on PS5, and let me tell you, the game is sharp, runs great, and hits a stable 60 FPS. Call it 4K or upscaled. It looks great on a base PS5. I know PC gamers with rigs 2x or 3x more powerful than the PS5, and they still prefer to finish Jedi Survivor on PS5. Let me emphasize something. I'm not trying to defend Sony, PlayStation, or the PS5 Pro. I'm just telling people, hey, you're making poor purchasing decisions because of the narratives going around the web. I'm not sourcing this from a website or YouTuber. This is coming from someone who plays on PS5 every day, has access to the best gaming PCs out there, and has played a ton on PS5 Pro. Guys, games on PS5 look great. 99% of games run at 60 FPS. 99% of games run smoothly. Like Mark Cerny, the chief architect of PlayStation, said in an interview with Digital Foundry, the narrative of PlayStation 5 being a 30 FPS 1080p machine is just BS. He continued, all AAA games run at 60 FPS at either native 4K or upscaled 4K. And if you look at the statistics, you can count on one hand the number of games recently released that don't run at 60 FPS, and those games are just poorly optimized. It's all BS. My problem is that people try to convince others that the PS5 is a scam, but to this day, there's no PC rig you can build, with peripherals included, that can reach the level of a PS5 console. And I didn't even talk about the PS5 Pro yet, and I'm not going to. There's this funny narrative floating around, the claim that the PS5 has no exclusives. Let's be real though, this argument is pure nonsense. If you look at the actual data and compare it to the history of PlayStation, the story is very different. The PS5 has had as many exclusives in its first 4 years as the PS4 did in the same time frame. And here's the kicker. Just like with the PS4, the best exclusives usually come later in the console's life cycle. Let's rewind a bit. When the PS4 launched, it came with games like Killzone, Shadowfall, and Knack. Decent? Sure. Groundbreaking? Not so much. They were like the opening act at a concert. Not bad, but nothing compared to the main performance. The real magic started a few years in, with masterpieces like Bloodborne, Uncharted 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, and God of War. Some of these arrived just 2 years before the PS5's debut. Did anyone claim the PS4 had no games in those early years? No, because building a library takes time, just like it does for any console. Now let's look at the PS5. In its first 4 years, we've already gotten next-gen exclusives like Demon's Souls, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, Spider-Man 2, Astro's Playroom, which is pre-installed for everyone, and Stellar Blade. These games aren't just solid, they're incredible showcases of what the PS5 can do. Yes, there are also cross-gen titles like Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok, and sure, a few exclusives like Helldivers 2 launched on PC too. But let's not pretend this is anything new. The PS4 had The Last of Us Remastered, a PlayStation 3 game, and Death Stranding, which eventually made its way to PC. Cross-gen and multi-platform releases have always been part of the gaming world. It's just how the industry evolves. And here's the thing, the best exclusives for any PlayStation console usually arrive later in its life cycle. Developers need time to fully understand the hardware and push it to its limits. It's like growing a fine wine. It doesn't reach its peak right away. The PS5's best games are still ahead of us, just like the PS4's were during its early years. Yet, even in this early stage, the PS5 has already delivered some stellar titles that rival any in the industry. So let's call this narrative what it is: BS. The idea that the PS5 has no games is not just false. It's a lazy, short-sighted argument. The PS5, much like the PS4 before it, is laying the groundwork for something extraordinary. And if history is any indication, the best is yet to come. So instead of clinging to outdated myths, maybe it's time to embrace the reality and look at the facts, and don't twist the facts.
You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here. Just make sure people know what happened here today.
Let's rewind to the early 2000s for a second. Remember renting games and movies? You'd drop $5 here or $10 there for a weekend's worth of entertainment. It felt totally normal until the rental period ended and you had to return everything or deal with late fees. Now fast forward to today. For $12 a month, you can have access to hundreds or even thousands of games. Sounds like a steal, right? But here's the thing. Not all subscriptions are created equal. How many subscriptions do you have right now? And more importantly, how many do you actually use? Be honest. fast. When's the last time you watched Netflix or ordered something with Amazon Prime? For me, the wake-up moment came when I realized I hadn't opened Netflix in almost a year or placed an Amazon order in 9 months. And yet, I was still paying for them. That made me ask, what am I really getting out of this? Okay, let's start with the positives. Services like PS Plus Extra give you an insane amount of content for a pretty small fee. Think about it. Back in the day, you'd spend $10 to rent one game for a weekend. But here's where it gets tricky. Not all subscriptions are worth it. Take Amazon Prime Video. You're already paying for the service, but then they hit you with ads. 5 minutes of ads in a 20-minute episode? That's not just frustrating. It feels insulting. Or Netflix, where it can feel like you're paying to sift through a mountain of mediocre content just to find a few hidden gems. And the real kicker, most of us are stuck in this auto-renew trap. We keep paying for things we don't use because it's just $10 or $12 a month. But those little charges add up fast. Before you know it, you're spending over $100 every month on stuff you barely even touch. Here's what I realized. I don't need all this extra fluff in my life. After canceling Netflix, Amazon Prime, and a bunch of other subscriptions, I'm saving $200 every month. My essentials now? Water, electricity, internet, rent, and PS plus extra. That's it. And honestly, I feel so much better without all the extra noise. Here's a new perspective many people don't talk about. And in less developed countries, gaming is not just expensive, it's borderline inaccessible. Imagine living in Eastern Europe, South America, or parts of Africa, where $70 for a game isn't just a number. It's an entire week's salary for many people. How can you justify spending that much on entertainment when you've got bills to pay and mouths to feed? For gamers in these regions, subscription services like PS Plus Extra and Game Pass are nothing short of a lifeline. For $10 or $12 a month, gamers in less developed countries gain access to hundreds of high-quality games. That's less than the cost of a single AAA title, and it comes with more content than most people could play in a year. It's not just a bargain, it's an opportunity. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.